Good day, Royals. Good day, Senior High School. Last meeting, we discussed about political ideologies. So for this meeting, we're going to discuss state, nations, and globalization. In this lesson, you will be able to differentiate the state and nation, as well as determine how globalization affect nation states. So let's start. Before we start, we're going to define first nations. Nations are commonly defined as cultural entities, that is, groupings of people bound together by shared values and traditions. In particular, nations share a common language, religion, history, and usually occupy the same geographical area. So that's the definition of nation. So I'm going to ask you first, is Philippines a nation? What's your answer? Of course not. Hindi nation ang Philippines because isa siyang lugar, okay? Country, okay? Pero ang tanong ko ngayon, ang mga nakatira ba sa Pilipinas ay maituturing na nation? Pwedeng oo at pwedeng hindi. Yun yung pag-aaralan natin later, okay? Just remember that a nation is like a big group of people who live in the same place and share things like a government, culture, and often a common language. It's like a big community with its own rules and identity. So that's nation. So later, let's go back sa question ko kanina if yung mga nakatira ba sa Pilipinas na tao ay nation o hindi. So sabi ko kanina, po pwedeng oo, po pwede ding hindi. So why? So we're going to discuss the two opposing conceptions of the nation, the exclusive and inclusive. Ano nga ba yung two opposing conception of nation? Ano nga ba yung exclusive nation and ano nga ba yung inclusive nation? So we're going to discuss. Exclusive stress the importance of ethnic unity and a shared history, national identity as given, unchanging, and indeed unchangeable. Nations are characterized by common descent. So that's exclusive. So in the exclusive conception, a nation is defined based on a specific characteristics such as ethnicity, race, religion, language, or cultural homogeneity. So ano nga ba yung homogeneity? Dapat like similar, okay? May parehong culture, may parehong history, may parehong language and religion, and so on and so forth. So ang may bibigay kong example sa exclusive, yung mga ethnic group of people. So, di ba, they have same culture, same language, same religion. So, dito sila magfo-fall sa exclusive nation. So, dito, this idea says a nation is only for a specific group of people, often based on things like ethnicity or religion. So, for example, a club that doesn't let everyone join, that's exclusive nation. So, while in inclusive nation, highlight the importance of civic consciousness and patriotic loyalty. Nations may be multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and so forth. So kung kanina sa exclusive, specific lang siya, limited lang siya. Dito naman sa inclusive, general na siya. Dito napapasok or sa inclusive nation, this idea believes that a nation can include a diverse range of people from different backgrounds. From the word itself, diverse. Okay, kahit magkakaiba ng language, kahit magkakaiba ng culture. So, 'di ba sa Pilipinas, hindi naman lahat ng tao ay pare-pareho ng language na ginagamit. Hindi lahat ng tao ay pare-pareho ang culture. Hindi lahat ng tao ay pare-pareho ang religion. So, dito na magfo-fall ang Pilipinas sa inclusive nation. So, kanina tinanong ko kung ang mga tao ba or ang mga tao ba na nakatira sa Pilipinas ay maituturing na nation? Sabi ko kanina pwedeng oo at pwedeng hindi. So sa exclusive, hindi. Pero sa inclusive, oo. So that's inclusive nation. So para mas maintindihan ninyo, inclusivity encourages the incorporation of individuals from diverse backgrounds regardless, okay? Take note of that. Regardless of their ethnicity, religion, or other specific characteristics. Kung kanina merong nakaset na standard sa exclusive, dapat same language, sa same religion, and so on and so forth. Dito sa inclusive, mas diverse, mas general. Kaya ang mga tao sa Pilipinas dito magfo-fall sa inclusive nation. Kaya maituturing na nation ang mga tao sa Pilipinas kasi general siya, regardless ethnicity, religion, or other specific characteristics. So that's nation, that's exclusive nation, and that's inclusive nation. I hope it's clear. So let's move on. So now we're going to discuss state. What is a state? According to Oman, a state is legally constituted entity which provides its citizens protection both from internal and external insecurity and aggression. A state has four essential elements, namely people, territory, government, and sovereignty. Among these four elements, sovereignty is the ultimate and defining feature of every state. So kapag sinabi nating state, hindi mag-exist ang isang state kung wala yung four important elements niya or essential elements. For example, merong people, meron siyang government, meron siyang territory, pero wala siyang sovereignty. Hindi pa rin mag-exist ang state kasi nga kailangan niya yung four essential elements niya, which are the people, government, sovereignty, and the territory. Kung wala yung apat na yan or kahit isa lang sa apat na yan, hindi mag-exist ang isang state. So, a state is like a big organization that runs a certain area like a country. It has its own leaders, rules, and usually it takes care of things like laws, security, and public services for the people who live there. So we're going to discuss the four essential elements of a state na kung wala yung isa sa apat na yan, hindi mag-exist ang state. So the first one, as you can see in the picture, people. People refers to those whom the state is obliged to protect and provide services to. They are the citizens, just like us, we, the citizens, who enjoy and exercise rights authorized by the state and mandated by the Constitution and law. That's the first essential element of state. So the second one, as you can see in the picture, territory. Territory refers to well-defined physical and geographic boundaries wherein the state reigns supreme and where the state's exercise of sovereignty is recognized both inside and outside these boundaries. So that's the territory. And the third one is government. Government, and the fourth one is sovereignty. But let's tackle first government. Government refers to the formal institution through which people are ruled. Sila yung namumuno. They are the leaders, okay, na nagpapatupad ng mga rules para sa mga citizens or for the people. So ano naman yung sovereignty? Sovereignty is the absolute or supreme exercise of power expressed either as unchallengeable legal authority or unquestionable political power. So just like what I said earlier, kung wala yung isa sa apat na essential elements ng state, hindi mag-exist ang isang state. So kailangan mabuo muna yung apat na yan, meron yung apat na yan bago mag-exist ang isang state. Now, we're going to discuss globalization. So I know that you're aware about globalization. So let's tackle. Globalization is predominantly understood and studied as an economic development. Globalization refers to the increasing interdependence of markets and production in different countries through trade in goods and services, cross-border flows of capital, and exchanges of technology. Globalization carries both opportunities and threats to nation states. Below are the advantages and disadvantages of globalization in the economic, political, and cultural and environmental aspects. But before we discuss the advantages and disadvantages of globalization, I'm going to ask you first, or I'm going to give you a trivia first about globalization. So did you know, because of globalization, you can enjoy products that originated from other country. For example, yung mga samyang and the other products na nanggaling sa Korea, 'di ba? Nai-enjoy natin. It's because of globalization. If it wasn't for globalization, you may not have been using a Samsung smartphone today or yung mga iPhone na ginagamit ng mga tao natin. It's because ng mga tao dito sa Pilipinas. It's because of globalization. And now we're going to discuss the advantages of globalization. The first one is Increased economic growth. Cross-border commerce and investment have made it easier for money, goods, and services to move, opening up new markets and spurring economic expansion. So here, globalization helps countries make more money by trading with others and expanding their markets. So dito, ang isa naman talagang goal ng globalization before ay matulungan um yung mga countries na bumaba yung ekonomiya, it's because of World War I and World War II. So dito, kaya ang isang goal ng globalization ay maiangat yung ekonomiya nila. At dito napapasok yung trading na nakikipagpalitan ng products yung iba't ibang mga countries para tumaas yung economic growth. So that's number one. So number two, we have cultural exchange. As a result of increased interdependence between individuals and countries, cultures, traditions, and ideas have been shared. Thanks to globalization, you can watch anime or K-drama and people from other countries may listen to our OPM songs. So that's cultural exchange. Yung culture ng ibang bansa na-adapt ng Pilipinas. Yung culture dito sa Pilipinas maybe na-adapt din ng ibang mga countries. It allows people from different parts of the world to learn about and enjoy each other's cultures like food, music, and art. So that's the number two. Number three, expanded job opportunities. Multinational firms invest in developing nations like the Philippines, which helps increase employment and economic growth. So it's in here in expanded job opportunities, more globalization means more companies, which open means more job options for people. It's because of globalization. Kasi kapag may globalization, it means mas maraming companies ang pwedeng maipatayo. So, mas nangangailangan sila ng maraming manggagawa. So, mas magkakaroon ng trabaho yung mga tao. Next, number four, we have greater competition. Global competition is brought on by the ability of numerous and diverse products. To keep their market share, businesses are forced to innovate, lower cost, and improve the quality of their products. The consumers gain from this because they have many options and cheaper prices. So dito, greater competition. When companies have to compete on a global scale, it can lead to better products and lower prices for consumers. Siyempre, kapag mas better yung isa, mas pagbubutihan naman yung isa. Kapag mas mura yung isa, syempre dapat mura din yung benta ng isa. That's why greater competition siya. So, isa siya sa advantage ng globalization. Next, number five, improved technology. Globalization has sped up the pace of technology development by facilitating the flow of ideas and technologies between nations. So here, in an improved technology, globalization encourages the spread of technology and innovation, making life more convenient and efficient. So dito, sa improved technology, for example, may na-discover ang isang country, pwede niyang i-share sa country or sa Pilipinas yung technology na yon na magagamit natin para mas ma-improve yung economy ng Pilipinas. So that's improved technology at isa din yan sa advantage of globalization para mas maging convenient ang life at mas maging efficient. And the last one is improve access to goods and services. The availability of goods and services has risen due to globalization, allowing customers to select from a wider variety of things at competitive cost. So here, it gives people access to a wider variety of products and services from around the world, making life more interesting and convenient. So, pwede kang makapili ng mga products na mas madami, it's because of globalization. Kasi merong mga product na meron dito sa Pilipinas na wala sa ibang mga bansa. Meron namang product sa ibang bansa na wala dito sa Pilipinas. So it's because of globalization po pwede nating makuha or mabili yung mga gusto natin. And now, we're going to discuss disadvantages of globalization. The first one is increase income inequalities. Are you familiar with the saying, ang mayaman ay lalong yumayaman, ang mahirap ay lalong naghihirap? Unfortunately, the wealth disparity has widened as a result of globalization, both locally and globally, because of jobs being moved to places with lower labor costs and the accumulation of wealth in the hands of a small number of multinational corporations. So dito, globalization can make the rich richer and the poor poorer, creating big gaps in wealth. Globalization can make some people very rich while others stay poor. For example, wealthy business owners in a country can benefit from cheap labor in other country, earning more profits while workers in their own country might not see similar income gains. Okay, so dito napapasok yung siguro later we're going to tackle yung isa din na loss of jobs. Bakit? Kasi for example, sa first na nagtayo sa country na ganito, ang isang company. Pero since nalaman niya na sa Pilipinas ay mas mura na ang bayad ng mga manggagawa dito, ililipat niya ngayon yung company niya dito sa Pilipinas. So, dito sa Pilipinas magkakaroon ng madaming work. Pero sa pinagtayuhan na una na country nung company na yon, of course, mawawalan ng mga work, yung mga manggagawa na una nang nag-work sa company na yon. So, kaya dito napapasok yung make the rich richer and the poor poorer. Okay? The next one is cultural homogenization. As was al- as was already noted, cultures, customs, and ideas have been shared because of globalization. Unfortunately, this has caused traditional values and traditions to become less important, particularly in developing nations. People have lost sight of their own cultural practices as they have grown more appreciative of other cultures. So dito na papasok yung mas minamahal na ng ibang mga tao yung culture ng ibang mga country kesa sa sariling atin. For example, dito sa Pilipinas, mas minamahal natin yung mga food na galing sa Korea or other countries kesa sa food na galing dito sa mismo sa Pilipinas. It can sometimes lead to a loss of unique cultural traditions and make the world more similar. So that's number two. And the last one, the number three, ito yung sinasabi ko kanina, loss of jobs. As the businesses move to nations with lower labor costs as a result of globalization, there is an increase in unemployment in developed countries. Ito yung sinasabi ko kanina, na kapag ang isang company nalaman niya na mas mura yung bayad sa mga manggagawa sa isang country, magmo-move sila. So mawawalan ng mga trabaho yung mga workers niya na dati. Some jobs may move to countries with cheaper labor, leading to unemployment in some places. For example, a company moving its customer service to a different country can lead to layoffs for local workers. So ito yung sinasabi ko na, for example, sa Pilipinas sila lilipat yung company na yon, magkakaroon ng work yung mga manggagawa or ibang tao dito sa Pilipinas. Pero sa nauna niyang pinagtayuan na country, doon naman magkakaroon ng loss of jobs yung mga manggagawa na before na nag-work sa company na yon. And the number four is environmental degradation. The increasing production and consumption of products and services, increased mobility, and urbanization brought on by globalization all contribute to environmental issues like climate change. So here, environment can suffer as industries expand, leading to pollution and resource depletion. This can lead to issues like pollution and sometimes maybe deforestation. For instance, increased international trade can result in more shipping, which contributes to air pollution and ocean ecosystem damage. So that's number four, the environmental degradation. Number five, globalization erodes national sovereignty because many foreign entities have an impact on the economic and social policies. Globalization causes changes to and the narrowing of national sovereign authorities. So here in globalization erodes national sovereignty, globalization can weaken a country's ability to control its own affairs and make decisions independently. Imagine a country wanting to make its own rules but finding it difficult because of international agreements. So po pwede naman na pwede mo sanang gawin ito, pero dahil nga sa mga international agreements, hindi mo siya magawa. It's because of globalization. Globalization can sometimes limit a country's ability to make decisions independently, like when it has to follow global trade rules even if they don't fit its needs. Okay, so that's globalization erodes national sovereignty. And the last one is unstable global markets. External downturns in one location can have a significant impact on other regions because of how interconnected the world's economy are. Risk for investors and consumers have escalated as a result, increasing financial instability. So from the word itself, interconnected. So kung naapektuhan yung isang bansa, isang country, maapektuhan din yung iba pang mga country because interconnected nga siya. So here, globalization can make economies more interconnected, and when a financial crisis happens in one part of the world, it can quickly affect other regions kasi nga interconnected na siya. So I have here an example. The global financial crisis of 2008 is a good example. It's starting in the United States but impacting economies worldwide because of globalization. So that's the disadvantages of globalization. Now, we're going to discuss historical development of Philippine democratic politics pre-colonial to revolutionary period. Let's start. Pre-colonial period. So the Philippines had a government system in place even before the arrival of the Spaniards. Bago pa man dumating yung mga Spanish colonizers dito sa Pilipinas, meron na talagang government system ang Pilipinas. So bago dumating nung dumating yung mga Malay dito sa Pilipinas, nagtatag sila ng sistema ng pamahalaan dito na tinatawag ng barangay, independent and self-sufficient political unit. The laws before are based on native customs and traditions. They were passed on from one generation to the next by oral tradition since these laws were unwritten. So, ang salitang barangay ay nagmula sa salitang balangay. So, ano nga ba yung balangay? Ito ay isang sinaunang sasakyang pandagat na gawa sa kahoy. So, that's barangay. Ano naman kaya yung tawag sa mga leader o namumuno ng barangay before? Datu. Datu naman yung tawag sa mga leader ng barangay. The head or leader of the barangay and the military head in some areas, they are called Raha or Sultan. The Datu has the authority to make laws, put those laws into effect, and provide judgment and legal disputes. So that's barangay at ang leader ay tinatawag na Datu. So now we're going to discuss social stratification. So this is the arrangement in society in which groups have different access to resources, power, and perceived social worth. So dito yung tatlong antas ng barangay na maharlika, malalayang tao, at mga alipin. Pero today, we have the upper class o mayaman sa nasa taas, parang mga maharlika before, the middle class, hindi mayaman, hindi rin mahirap, o yung mga malalayang tao noon, and the lower class o mga nasa laylayan, sila naman yung mga alipin before. Okay, so, next. But before that, they have the following below. Maginoo. So pag sinabing Maginoo, dito napapasok yung mga datu. The royal-blooded such as the datu. Timawa, made up of the commoners of a community, and Maharlika, well-respected warriors of the barangay. So what's the difference between Timawa and Maharlika? So before, may dalawang uri ng malalayang tao. Ang una ay ang Maharlika. Sila ang mga mayayamang mandirigma, mangangalakal o manggagawa. Ang mga mandirigma ang nagpapanatili ng kapayapaan sa barangay. Kung kinakailangan nilang makipaglaban, tumutulong ang mga maharlikang mandirigma sa datu. So, yun yung maharlika. So, meron pang isang uri ng malalayang tao before o tinatawag namang timawa. Gaya ng mga Maharlika, tumutulong din sila sa datu sa larangan ng pagsasaka, pangingisda, pangangaso o anumang gawaing pinangungunahan ng datu. So kanina may question, let's go back to my question. What's the difference between timawa and Maharlika? So ang kaibahan lang ng dalawa ng timawa sa Maharlika, ang timawa ay binubuo ng mga anak sa labas ng isang maginoo. Yun yung kaibahan ng timawa sa Maharlika. And now, we're going to discuss naman alipin. The one who serves anyone who is above their class. Below are the two types of alipin. For example, alipin, sila yung mga nagsisilbi sa datu noon, nung panahon ng, nung sistema pa ng pamahalaan ay ang barangay. So, meron tayong dalawang types or we have two types of alipin. Number one is aliping namamahay. Have their own quarters inside the property of their masters, has the right to choose their husband or wife, can own property and being paid for their service. Okay, so ang aliping namamahay ay mayroong sariling tahanan. Hindi na sila nakatira sa tahanan ng datu. Though nagsisilbi sila sa datu, pero meron silang sariling tahanan or tirahan. Tungkulin nilang tumulong sa datu tuwing sila ay tatawagin. Kapag tatawagin lang sila ng datu, saka lang sila pupunta or tutulong sa datu. Ano naman yung aliping sa gigilid? Aliping sa gigilid have no home, thus lives with their masters. Or can be sold by their masters, serves without getting paid, and cannot marry without the permission of their master. So dito, sa aliping sa gigilid naman, wala silang mga sariling tahanan. Unlike aliping na mamahay na meron silang sariling tahanan. At nakatira sila mismo sa bahay ng datu na pinagsisilbihan nila. So pwede silang atasan or utusan ng anumang tungkulin anong oras man naisin ng datu. Unlike nung aliping na mamahay na saka lang sila uutusan or magsisilbi sa datu kapag tatawagin sila ng datu. Pero itong aliping sa gigilid, pwede silang atasan ng anumang tungkulin kahit anong oras gustuhin ng datu. That's the difference between aliping na mamahay and aliping sa gigilid. I hope it's clear. And now, we're going to discuss the Spanish period. The governmental structure of the archipelago was altered during the Spanish occupation. The Philippines was directly administered by Spain until 1898. So here, Spanish period, dito na nagkaroon ng centralized government. Centralized government from independent barangays, the Spaniards consolidated power under a centralized government. In a centralized government, also known as a united government, instead of being more evenly spread among several lower-level governments, both the executive and legislative branches are concentrated centrally at the upper level. So dito na nagkaroon ng isang government na sinusunod ng lahat ng mga tao or ng mga citizens. Okay? So for example, dito na yung sinusunod ng mga tao o yung leader na ng government ay tinatawag na Governor General noong panahon ng mga Espanyol. So ang Governor General, the king's official representative in the colonial Philippines, the chief executive of the Philippines during the Spanish, have the power to enforce Spanish laws and royal decrees. So yun na yung kaibahan. Dito na nagkaroon ng centralized government na kung saan meron ng sinusunod na leader na tinatawag na Governor General. Let's continue. Kabesa di barangay, ito naman na yung naging rule ng mga dato before. For example, di ba ang tawag sa mga leader ng barangay before ay datu. So dito, nung Spanish period, noong dumating na ang mga Espanyol sa Pilipinas, ang ang tawag na sa kanila ay Cabeza de Barangay, the datu during pre-colonial times. The leader or chief of a barangay in the Philippines during the Spanish colonial period, the datu's traditional powers during pre-colonial times were lost and were limited to collecting taxes. So dito, sa noong pre-colonial, ang leader ng barangay ay mga datu. Pero nung Spanish period, naging kabesa di barangay sila na kung saan sila na lang yung mga nagko-collect ng taxes noong Spanish period. Sila yung mga datu noong pre-colonial period. So ito namang gobernadorcillo, sila naman yung mga little governor, the leader of a town or mas kilala bilang pueblo. So dito sa alkalde or alcalde mayor, the one who governed the provinces that had been fully subjugated. So dito ito yung mga tahimik na nalalawigan. Sila yung mga nangunguna, alkalde or alkalde mayor ang tawag sa mga leader o nangunguna sa mga lalawigang tahimik na. Ang mga naninirahan dito ay maluwag na sumusunod sa kanilang mga pinuno o yung kilala nga na sa tawag na alkalde or alkalde mayor. Yun yung mga pinuno nila. So ano naman yung corregidor? The one who governed the provinces that were not yet entirely under Spanish control. So dito naman ang mga lalawigang hindi pa ganap na nasasakop ng mga Espanyol. Ito ay patuloy na tumututol at hindi sumusunod yung mga mamamayan nito sa kanilang mga leader. Pinamumunuan ito ng isang tagapamahalang militar o mas kilala nga bilang corregidor. So yung alcalde mayor or alkalde, ang pinamumunuan niya yung mga lalawigan na tahimik na. Ito na yung mga sumusunod, yung mga naninirahan dito ay maluwag na sumusunod sa kanilang mga pinuno or sa mga Spanish. Pero yung corregidor, yung pinamumunuan naman niyang mga lalawigan ay hindi pa ganap na nasasakop ng mga Espanyol dahil patuloy na tumututol yung mga mamamayan sa mga rules or sa mga ipinapatupad ng kanilang mga leader. Yun yung kaibahan ng dalawa. I hope it's clear. Now, we're going to discuss the last one, revolutionary period. The second part of the 19th century saw the awakening of Filipino nationalist sentiments. Leading figures in the propaganda movement included Jose Rizal, Marcelo H. del Pilar, and Graciano Lopez Haynap, pushed for reform so that Filipinos would have access to the same freedoms and liberties as those enjoyed by Spaniards. So dahil hindi nagustuhan ng mga Pilipino yung naging pamumuno ng mga Espanyol dito sa Pilipinas, dito napapasok yung revolutionary period. So dito napapasok yung itinatag nila na kataas-taasang kagalang-galangang katipunan ng mga anak ng bayan o mas kilala bilang katipunan. So however, the failure of the propaganda to initiate changes in the society gave birth to a secret association, the kataas-taasang kagalang-galangang katipunan ng mga anak ng bayan o mas kilala nga bilang katipunan. Ito yung isang organization founded in 1892 by Andres Bonifacio and a group of patriots. The Katipunan sought independence from Spain and set the 1896 revolution in motion. It has its own form of government which had national and local levels. So dito merong nung naipanganak ang Katipunan or binuo ang Katipunan, secret lang siya na organization na binuo ni Andres Bonifacio. Si Andres Bonifacio ang tinaguri ang supremo ng Katipunan kasi siya yung naging head. Ang utak naman ng Katipunan ay si Emilio Jacinto. Pero ang leader or supremo ng Katipunan ay si Andres Bonifacio. Dito yung naging hudyat ng digmaan na kung saan pinunit nila yung kanilang mga sedula. So ano naman tong kataas-taasang sanggunian or Supreme Council? So ito yung highest governing body of the Katipunan. So ito yung sinusunod ng mga members. It was headed by a supremo or president. Each province had a sangguniang bayan, provincial council, and each town had a sangguniang balangay or popular council. Ito yung sinasabi ko kanina. It was headed by a supremo or president. So yung supremo or president ng Katipunan ay si Andres Bonifacio. Pero yung utak ng Katipunan ay walang iba kung hindi si Emilio Jacinto. Let's continue. So, Tijeros Convention was a meeting between Katipunan functions of Magdiwang and Magdalo. So, yung grupo ng Magdiwang at Magdalo dito sa Tijeros Convention, ito yung meeting nila na kung saan pipili sila ng unang magiging leader or unang magiging presidente ng Pilipinas. So, ang na-elect na presidente ng Pilipinas ay si Emilio Aguinaldo. Siya yung na-elect ng mga tao or grupo ng Magdiwang at Magdalo bilang presidente or kauna-unahang presidente ng ng Pilipinas. So si Aguinaldo established a dictatorial government. It was under this dictatorial government that the Philippine independence from Spain was declared on June 12 in Kawit, Cavite. So kapag sinabi nating dictatorial government, hindi ba't walang boses ang mga mamamayan? Ang nasusunod lang dito ay yung kagustuhan ng leader or yung presidente. So merong nagpayo kay Emilio Aguinaldo na palitan ang dictatorial government. Kasi dito, hindi nasusunod yung kagustuhan or hindi pinapakinggan yung boses ng mga mamamayan. Kaya dito, nagtatag or naipatupad yung Malolos Constitution. This paved the way to launching the first Philippine Republic na kung saan nagkaroon na ng democratic. It established a democratic republication government with three branches, the executive, o yung mga members nito ay like mga presidente, vice president, and such. So yung legislative, sila naman yung mga bumubuo ng mga um, laws, okay? Sila yung mga senators ngayon and judicial branches. It called for the separation of church and state. Dito na pumasok yung democratic na dating dictatorial, naging democratic siya na kung saan mapapakinggan yung boses ng mga mamamayan. So that's the revolutionary period. I hope everything is clear and thank you for your attention, Senior High School. This is Fasi Ahmed, your facilitator in your subject Politics and Governance.